Okay, thank you, everybody, and Budget Committee is back. All right, resuming the discussion on scheduling school work sessions. Mr. Foltz.
I propose that we do the Monday the 22nd of December at 6:30, and then we do January 5th as our work session 2 at 6:30.
I am fine with that.
Can you just repeat that one more time, Dave?
Sure. December 22nd, Monday, 6:30 p.m., first work session for school. Then we'll take a week off, and then we'll come back on January 5th for work session 2 for the school budget session.
Excellent. Thank you.
Because
Does
then
that
we have
work
our
for
public
everybody?
hearing the following week.
Okay. I did get a brief, I sent a question out to MJ today as far as if she knew her schedule going forward, just to make sure that, as we were trying to consider everybody, just so everybody knows, and she said she would make as much work. She had a conflict in early November, but I didn't obviously see that was a problem. So I'm going to assume that these dates are okay for her as well. Yes, Mr. Simon, thank you for raising your hand.
If we do, as Dave suggests, we'll have our second school session on the 5th. When is the school budget presentation to the public?
The 12th.
Which means that the notice has to go out a week before, which is the 5th. So how could the notice be in the paper on the 5th if we're not going to be having the second meeting until the 5th?
They don't have the same requirements, right?
You don't have a week's notice?
They have a week's notice, but does not have to have the budget in the notice. Town you do, school you don't. You just have to notice that you're having the public hearing that
Public
night.
hearing, such and
Right.
such day. That's it.
So the notice can go out regardless?
Correct.
Even if we have to have another meeting after the 5th?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you for the clarification.
I'm going to
Can we
run
get
through
the
it
rules this evening?
from the top.
Oh, boy.
All right, starting in November. November 17th, 6:30, Town Budget Work Session, 1 of 2. The following Monday, November 24th, 6:30, Town 2 of 2, and a vote. Be prepared, bring snacks.
Fudge.
Russ? Mike, you can bring a bag of nuts if you need to.
I'll be bringing the nuts.
December, Monday, December 15th, 7 PM, public hearing, town budget. Sorry, I had told you vote 2 of 2, that is incorrect on the 24th. The vote is on the 15th of December. Doesn't change the meeting dates. So town is November 17, November 24, public hearing on the 15th with the vote after. That's snack night. Okay? That gets the town going.
Amy, sorry, I'm confused then. You're saying the vote is after the public hearing on the
Correct.
town? I thought Steve was the one
For the
that
town.
said that you needed the numbers, or else you have to have a second public hearing on the town.
If you vote, if you take the input on the public hearing, everything's fine. Everything's perfect for the budget. You don't need to amend it. You can vote that night, everything's fine. If you want to amend it, we just post it again for some day before the 6th of January and give us 7 days' notice.
We still have
And you
time
can come
to-
in.
we
Like,
have
you can
time
come in
to
the
do-
29th and just have a quick public hearing and vote on it.
Okay.
Right, before we start the school.
Is the Budget Committee then isn't going to vote on the numbers for the town before they go to the town?
You just send it to public hearing. You usually do a poll and say, this is okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
Send
is,
it to
and
public
this is
hearing.
gonna be roll call, and we'll get that, okay? We good up to the 15th of December?
Yeah.
December 22nd. December 22nd, school 1 of 2, 6:30. January 5th, school 2 of 2, and vote. January 12th, 7 PM, public hearing. Oh, ignore my other vote. That's the budget committee vote. My apologies. We vote after the public hearing.
For the school, not the town.
For the school. We're on school now.
The
We finished
town-
with the town.
right.
We're all done with the town. These are no more. So January, I'm gonna go back on the school thing here, but again, we will send this out to everybody. December 22nd, 6:30, school 1 of 2. January 5th, 6:30, school 2 of 2. 7 PM, January 12th, school public hearing, followed by our vote. We do have a tentative meeting default on January 14th, if needed, for the school. Should we set up a default if needed for the town?
Nah.
No? Everybody, okay, Steve's shaking his head.
And we'll be fine.
I'll hold you
Just
to
let
that.
Okay.
The other way
If
around.
need be, if need be, I think we do have time for that. There is Tuesday
Yeah.
the 16th. There is, you know, we can do that if need be. Okay, and then January 26th is the last day to post for deliberative session for both town and
Right,
school.
right.
And then deliberative session,
31st.
31st of January, 9 AM.
Just for the record, the backup is the following week, the following Saturday. If there's a blizzard, the moderator can come in, recess the deliberative session, and say it's going to be this time.
Right.
We use both Saturdays just in case.
Okay. Whew, that
We
was
don't
big.
get blizzards up here in February.
No.
Yeah.
9.
Get a good car, we'll do it. Blizzard is no excuse, I will come and pick it.
We will do it.
Because my car isn't broke. Okay, all right.
Tax rate? When we go to the tax rate?
Let me collect my mind. All right, Dave, do you want to type that up? Do you want me to type that up?
Type it
And
all up, I got it.
okay. But everybody has it for their own responsibility too, which is great. Then we can't blame Dave.
Where's the fun in that?
Okay. And I've lost my agenda, but anyway, the last bit of this is that, no, I appreciate it, but, is Mr. Fournier with the tax rate.
Okay. I'm going to ask the bunch of you who are sitting there. That may be wrong.
Because it's right in front of me.
Real quick, we received today the unofficial tax rate. It still has to be approved by the Commissioner of the Department of Revenue Administration. However, if it changes, it's going to change extremely slightly, so we're pretty confident this is it. Looking at the figure, last year's tax rate was 24.46. This year's tax rate is going to be 25.75. We will get into it exactly why there's a large increase, but just to explain what the breakdown is, the blue little part is 24.16%, is at $6.22 is the town. The green big part, I did say it on purpose that way, it all goes to the school. 62.14 goes to the local school, or $16 per thousand. In the state school is $2.43 per thousand, or $9.44%. And that small purple slither is the county, and that's $1.10. So why the increase so large? The valuation of the town dropped 4.4%. As I said, we did a revaluation this year, and when that happens, sometimes the value goes up. We knew it wasn't going to go up because we're assessed at about 102% prior to this fiscal year, so we want to get between 95 and 100%. At 100%, we actually dropped 4%. So the value of the town went from $744,537,983 to $711,970,612. What does that mean? Last year, for every dollar of the tax rate, you were able to raise $744,537. Now, for every dollar tax rate, you raise $711,970. However, that doesn't mean your tax bills went up. I want to have this as a clarification. If you look at the left-hand side, and then after the line, there's where it says 2014 value, there are 6 property values in there. 6 of you will find that that number looks familiar. Those are your values for 6 of you randomly well, not randomly, but in this room. So, if your home value at last year was $360,000, at a tax rate of $24.46, your tax bill last year was $8,805.60. Well, the value of your property dropped to $313,900. Even though the tax rate went up to $25.75, your tax bill now is $8,082.93, or a savings of $722.68. Doesn't happen all the time that way. As you can see, the next one down. The value of the property was $221,200. The tax bill last year was $5,410.55. Even though the property value dropped, it didn't drop, I hate to say it this way, enough. And the tax bill this time would be $5,649.55, or an increase of $239. And the rest are all other properties there as well. So you can see that just because the rate went up doesn't mean the bills went up. And just to go further, this is the town portion. On that sheet you also have the county, the school, and the state school. Again, that $360,000 home, last year the rate was $6.07 per thousand, and the bill for the town portion only was $2,185.20. Now that one is $313,900. The rate went up to $6.22, and the bill's now $1,952.46, or a difference of $232.74. Again, that second one did see the increase, but for the town it was $21.98 for the year. So, what would have happened if we used last year's values with this year's budget, with the fiscal year 15 budget? So last year the tax rate for the town was $6.07. The rate we set today is $6.22. If we were able to use last year's value, our rate would have only been $5.95. So you would have seen a reduction on our side of 8 cents. The school last year was $15.02. It's gone up to $16. It would have only been a 28 cents increase of $15.30. The state school would have gone down actually by 3 cents to $2.32, and the county would have gone up 3 cents. So the tax rate you'd have seen would have gone from $24.46 to $24.62, and not to $25.75. I just want to explain. I just wanted to show that because you're going to have people saying, shocked that the tax rate's going up to $25.75, but the bills are not necessarily going up to reflect that same thing. And I just want to keep hammering that fact home. You're going to see a release in the next few days of $25.75, but it's not what your bill's going to be.
Because it's based on the per $1,000.
Exactly. It's based on the evaluation of your property, and the valuation goes down. Most cases, not all. Sometimes your tax bill goes down, but it has to be a certain percentage. Russ?
The school numbers
Yes.
are all adjusted for the 620.
This is it. This is the final number. This is what we got from DRA. That's
Okay,
it.
So if the 622 wasn't in there, then that line would have been increased about a little less than 1%.
Close to 2.
So I just want to hammer that home with this committee, especially when we start looking at the budget. That's what we're talking about.
We still got
Okay?
work to do.
And there was a question about fund
1
balance.
second, I don't care.
Fund balance, for those who don't know, for the town is the difference between what was appropriated and what was the actual expenditures and above revenues that were anticipated. That goes into what we call the unreserved fund balance, commonly referred to as our surplus. Prior to last year, the town was the only entity who was allowed to carry a surplus. Last year, the law changed and the school was allowed to hold 2.5%, I believe, now in surplus from their difference between their expenditures and what was budgeted. our issue is, the town is the only entity here that collects money for everybody. And no matter what happens, and luckily, the superintendent and the school department and the town works together well, but if we didn't, and come when the school needed money, and they knocked on our door, we'd have to give them the money. We can't hold off. The town to the point where the town could possibly have to borrow money in order to pay the school. The county, I have to pay $770,000 to the county by December 15th. That's, I already know when the county bill is due, so we have to hold that. The figure that they recommend is that the town have between 5 and 10% of the gross appropriations for the town, school, and county in what they call the unreserved fund balance. Our policy says we should have at 8, and we cannot go lower than 5. What this is a comparison of is what we use to either offset the tax rate or do one-time capital expenditures, which is the way you should do it. You shouldn't do it to offset the tax rate, because what happens is exactly what you have here. You have a surplus in fund balance, so you use a lot of it to buy down the tax rate. Well, guess what? You don't have that the next year. But you still have the same tax rate, so you can't use as much, and the tax rate drops up. So what the policy is also for the town is that we have to budget the use of our fund balance. Right now, we're budgeting the $450,000, and that would bring this down to the $1.5 million for fund balance at the end of this fiscal year.
Which is what percent, Steve?
That would be that's a little bit over 8%. I'm going to be meeting with the council on Wednesday, and we're going to look at some other ways to use that for the budget. So that number will probably change. But our fund balance is healthy. We've been using it steadily the way we should be using it, and returning it, and trying to offset capital one-time things, because you don't want to use money that you don't know you're going to have in the next year to offset something that's a constant expense. So I try to line it up with what we may contribute to capital reserve funds, or if we have a one-time expenditure in there. That's really about the 400 some odd thousand. So that is our fund balance. And we'll get more into this when we do the budget, but I just want to get everybody ready in case of hearing things when we're talking with the council. That's it. And I can turn this on to get questions. Oops, sorry.
Steve, when you say 8% is our goal, is that 8% of what the town spends or the combined?
Combined. And that's a good question right now, because next year, the school's going to be having a fund balance. However, the Government Finance Office Association and for the state, they haven't taken into consideration that the school's now going to be able to fund balance. So while I'm still saying that we need to keep 5 to 10%, because that's what the policy states, the recommendation from the state is, they're not considering that now the school's going to be having their own fund balance. And they can use their fund balance to offset situations like if they don't have the money on time.
Exactly.
And
So we could, as a town, say that rather than considering 8% to be the reasonable amount, we could say 7. Or
well, yeah, we can go down to 5. And one of the things the problem though is the law may have changed to allow them to have a fund balance, but the law hasn't changed that doesn't say that says they can't come to the town and say they want their money. So I still have to have that money in case the school comes knocking on my door, because then I'd have to issue a tax anticipation note, which.
Yeah, but it lessens the chance
Yeah.
that they will. I mean, again, you guys work.
We work well together, and we're fine, and they should know. I mean, if I have to issue a tax anticipation note, that means that we also have to pay the interest on that note, and that's money that we have to pay. And again, it's for whatever's out there, so that's why we try to keep something.
Russ?
If I understood the percentages, it's basically what's raised in taxes is what the percentage is based on. So if we ended up having revenues of $25 million for the town between outside revenue sources and tax revenues, and let's say 8 million of that was revenues that came from non-tax revenue. Okay, so it'd be 25 minus 8, you'd be basing the 7 or 8% on $17 million of tax revenue?
Our gross appropriation right now is about 18 million. Because we also back out from there the water and sewer since they have their own revenue source.
Okay.
So, every year, no matter what, including the revenue, other source of revenue, I know I have to come up right now with $18 million.
And that's what the expenses are less,
That is
Water and
that is
sewer.
what's been appropriated. So it's not expenses, it's what's been appropriated.
okay?
What's been approved for the budget is about $18 million.
Regardless of the revenue. though. So
Regardless
you
of revenue, because if I got no revenue coming in this year for some strange reason, which probably wouldn't happen, I still need to raise $18 million. That means I don't have anything to offset that, and I still am liable for that 18 million.
That's for the town. And the
That's for everybody. I'm liable for what the school needs to raise,
but
because
the-
I collect the money.
But the school's new general fund, if they have a surplus,
Re-
I think Christine
Unreserved fund balance.
is based on less outside revenue, I think, because it was only based on $12 million, where the school budget's like,
I don't know what
Yes,
there's,
that's
I've.
my understanding.
Yeah. But I'm saying on my side, which is, because everybody asks me what the town fund balance is, because everybody wants to know what we can use to offset tax increases. Let's put all the cards on the table. I need to hold between 5 and 10% of everybody's appropriations, because the town is the one who collects it. And we're the one ultimately responsible for it.
less water and sewer.
Less water and sewer, that's a different one.
And that also goes to, Mike, to your side of it, is that this school is just getting started with its own fund balance, and, you know, this is year one of funding, and that potentially is 2.5% of any surplus,
No.
up to a cap of X.
So it's 2.5%. The fund balance for them can't exceed 2.5% of their gross the $12 million, which is not your
Yes.
gross appropriation.
Yes.
It's not as part of the excess. It's, if there's an excess, that's, let's say, the 600,000. They then would make a side calculation that said, we have 12 million in our number of gross appropriations times 2.5% would come out with 300,000. The
Would
most,
be up to that, the most.
the most they could
Right.
vote into their
So that's kinda
surplus would
getting
be
started.
3.
Go ahead.
I would just say that I'll make sure the board understands what the gross amount is, and we'll make sure the budget committee knows what the size of the pot could be. That's one question. And I think Russ has really tried to explain it, and I think he's right, but it's still the size of the pot. The other thing is what it does to the unreserved fund balance and change. We have a $622,000 unreserved fund balance in the budget that raised those, that creates those tax rates. If that goes down to 300,000, we've increased the tax rate by 1%. And so I don't know how we're gonna manage that. I mean, if we had a $700,000 surplus a year from now, then I would say we ought to probably grab that 100,000, that difference, and put it into the contingency thing, because
Right.
it's, and we may not want to, if we passed a bond, we may not want to, we may not want to put anything in the contingency thing. So I think some years there'd be an opportunity to make a deposit in that. Some other years, you may want to make a withdrawal. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think that big number's going to get put in next year, or any years. coming
No,
up.
and
There'll
to
be
your
small
point,
amounts over
and
time.
perhaps I'll echo people's feeling here, I don't want to see a surplus of $700,000 every year. Okay? We can do a better job budgeting to begin with. Perhaps there's going to be some checks and balances there. That's a chunk of change to pull out only to give back or in savings, whatever. I would rather see funding by warrant article to specifically fund, as we have done in the past. If there is a surplus, I realize, again, it's a moving target from year to year, we're budgeting so far out. But if we, that's a huge number in a surplus that came back for a number of reasons, understandable, this year. If that continues year over year, I think that's not the kind of budgeting that I would expect Christine and the school board to be doing. So to your point, I think that is, more of a one-time thing this year, and we'll get it more on track as we go. At least that would be my hope.
Amy, could I just
Yeah.
respond to you?
Of course.
Steve talked in terms of 5 to 8% for his fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
Our surplus was probably 2.25% of our gross appropriation. I think it's so sinful to overspend your budget that I think we would want a positive surplus every year. And I would agree with you that 600,000 seems like a lot, but I would be nervous at 175,000 or 225, because you just don't know some of those end-of-the-year expenses. And before we had a fund balance or a surplus, we had to budget in some levels, what we thought it would be plus a little bit, because we didn't know for sure, fuel, oil, all of that
Of
sort of
course.
stuff. And I would hope that they could, with the fund balance, you could do, as you suggested, budget a little tighter, because now you have a little bit of rainy day fund, which we've never had before. So it's a brand-new world for school districts. And when you look at what we can spend the surplus for, the main goal there is really, the one you have most flexibility, is reduce fund balance or reduce the increase on taxes the following year. That's one of the main purposes of that fund. The other uses of that fund are very limited. More limited than what the town has for opportunity to use their surplus funds for, or their unreserved fund balance.
Our unreserved, we can't appropriate during the year. So once we appropriate, that's it. So if we see that snow plowing is going over $50,000, I have to cut the budget $50,000. I can't dip into fund balance, that stays where it is. We only can appropriate, tax rate setting time, legally, our policy says I cannot touch fund balance to lower the tax rate. Only time we can use tax rate is part of the budgetary process. So that's why in my proposed budget, it states $450,000 withdrawal from fund balance.
That's different, isn't
The only other way you can do it is if you have if you want to make a capital reserve fund or purchase something once, you can make a warrant article and withdraw money from fund balance and then place it in there. Again, that's sort of new for us, because we never had to have capital reserve funds separate from the budget until this year, and maybe it'll be the only year that we have to, because we're going to try to amend the charter to fix that. But that's the only things that we can. It's not, we can't, if we appropriate $9 million, I can't expend more than $9 million. So that's with our
That
fund
makes
balance.
some sense, and
Yeah.
I think that's my point.
And just for our number two,
We're looking for balance.
we added a couple $100,000 to fund balance this year, and it wasn't because of the budget. It wasn't because we had surplus in the budget. We had revenues we didn't anticipate come in. So that's truly the windfall side. We only submitted to fund balance through under expenditure about $100,000, which sounds like a lot, but for most towns that's not. Especially when you have snow events and issues like that we have to worry about. If we had another blizzard or something, we've been extremely close.
Are we figuring at this point, based on where we're at now, I know we used to have a number of, how many 100,000 was $1 on the tax rate. I believe right now it's about 711,000
Exactly.
is $1 on the tax rate.
Yep.
Just so everybody knows, if you're doing a rough calculation and doing math, as far as what goes into operating budgets and.
If you have that sheet on that PowerPoint presentation where it compared the town valuation, take the last one, that 711 million, divide by 1,000. That's it.
Steve, on the fund balance surplus, can you explain the methodology of 8%?
Yep, it's the adding the gross appropriation of the town.
Why, sorry, I should
Why-
probably, why have you and the town council, or just you,
Nope.
come up with a number of staying around
Policy,
8%?
policy is between 5 and 10. The DRA recommends between 5, they recommend between 5 and 10. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends between 5 and, I believe it's now 18%. We're low compared to other states in the union. A lot of states have 25 to 45% of their gross appropriations that's required in fund balance. New Hampshire, since it's really only one source of revenue, which is taxation, they only recommend that we have to need to keep between 5 and 10%. Is it a requirement? No. You can go down to 0. Will you get will you get your audit hit? Yes, and I wouldn't recommend. Our policy actually states that if we go below 5, that the budget, that I have to propose in my budget a number to get us up to 5. So there'll be an appropriation to whatever that amount would be to get us up to 5%, and that would just can't be spent and be automatically rolled back into the operating budget. So we're always up at 5. And the other reason why you want that there is that when either side, anybody needs to go borrow, that's something that the bond banks look at, is how much do you have in fund balance. And when the school needs to go borrow for a bond, they come and look at our financials, because we're the ones who do the collecting, and they gotta make sure that we have cash on hand if they need something to pay their bond off. So that's why we try to keep that not very healthy, but healthy enough to cover where we need to be.
The reason why I asked the question is it kind of seems a little too healthy. And the
Yep.
reason why I say that is historically, it looks like we've just brought down the tax rate with it. And I'm not a fan of taxing and then giving it back. I'd rather just not tax. Has there been any talk or thoughts of lowering the percentage and still being in a comfortable spot?
Again, the state recommends the 5 to 10.
And we're at 8.
We're at 8.
Last year, I believe we were at 10, and we brought down the tax rate with 2%.
Well, we didn't buy down the tax rate. I want to make sure that's clear. What we did is we appropriated it as revenue. And that means it's going against something that goes against the capital reserve. So we take that money and put it in our savings accounts. And that is the way you do it. You don't do it to buy down the tax rate, because then you're putting that money towards to constant expenditures, such as salaries.
Layman terms, though, people
Well,
thought that.
and that's why I want to clarify it, because layman terms,
that's what it was.
that's wrong. Well, that's wrong. This is the correct way, this is the reasoning is. If we had less in fund, if we had less capital reserve, if we had less additional fund balance to put in, my first place I go to is I reduce the capital contribution to capital reserves, because we don't have that excess money to put into our savings accounts. The next thing you do is you reduce your one-time expenditures, roads, purchasing a vehicle, those kind of things, because those are one-time expenditures. We've just been lucky that we've been offsetting those things. So it's not buying down the tax rate, it's just another source of revenue. If motor vehicle registrations came in lower, and I need to make up that difference, and I had the fund balance, I'd bump up the withdrawal from fund balance and reduce the amount that's going to be coming from motor vehicle revenues, because I need to make sure that the tax rate stays stable. What you're going to hear right now from other communities, and a lot of the smaller communities, is exactly what you said, buying down the tax rate. Because what they do is they sit here in October, and we did it in previous years before I got here. You get the amount of what the estimated tax rate's going to be. You get the auditors to tell you what your fund balance is, and then you say, oh, I'm $500,000 over 5%. I'm going to throw that all at the tax rate. Well, guess what? The next year, you didn't get that many motor vehicle registrations, or you didn't sell that property, or you didn't get that, so you come in and say, I don't have that $500,000 to make up that difference. So not only am I got the budget I proposed and passed this year, I'm already in the hole $500,000 I need to make up again. That's why if you notice on that chart, we've been going 450, 450, 450, 450, so it stays pretty stable. And yes, you see a little bit creep on some of the fund balance amount, but you also notice there was a drop, because we saw some revenue changes. So we are trying to offset that. And 5%, I would not, and I would put it in writing and staple it to every folder, that I could not recommend to the town council ever going lower than 5%. It's not good for the council, it's not good for the schools. Because if the schools are going to have to issue a bond, and we don't have the finances, if we don't have the safety net, it's going to affect their bond, what they can borrow. So it's not, that's one of the big things that people need to realize when they borrow money, they look at our books. And they got to make sure that we're fiscally healthy.
Just to add,
Just keep it,
yeah,
if you would, because we've got one more agenda.
8% is 1 month's expenses. So if you think about being able to have issues come up that you have to react to, having 1 month's expenses is a pretty shallow reserve for a town. Flood, whatever, emergency expenses. And I think that the point that Steve was making is that we had a much more variable revenue, where there were 15 different things going on that all could change in any particular year. That's where the towns tend to have a 20 or 30%, because they need that extra cushion, because there's so much variability in where the revenue's coming from. Because here, we're a
And
little
real quick,
stabler, 8%'s not much.
I want to make sure everybody realize, this is not cash in hand. We're not sitting on, $1.9 million in a savings account here. This is all accounting. So I just don't want anybody to think that that we have that cash sitting somewhere in a bank account. This is all accounting information.
And one more quick question. At our last meeting, Steve, you talked about a $400,000 surplus. Is that in the current budget proposed dropping?
I propose to the town council to be using $450,000 from unreserved fund balance in the fiscal year 16 budget as a revenue source. The council will be reviewing that Wednesday night and maybe making a change or using additional fund balance to go somewhere else. But what that did, basically, that additional revenue that we had went to offset last year's withdrawal from the fund balance. So we stayed about the same.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very good. The other agenda item actually is Mike doing the same thing for the school. This is October. We had talked about having end October, I think, doing that in November at our last meeting. I didn't know if Christine had sent you with anything to go over where we are fiscal year to date for the school as of now.
I do not have anything on
Okay.
fiscal year to date.
Is that something that at our next meeting, if I could ask the budget committee if they would be willing before, on November 17th, we're due to start the town budget work session. That's one of two. If before that, could we get a school fiscal year 15 update to date? If Christine would be so kind as to spend 15 or 20 minutes with that, is the budget committee all right with that? That keeps them on the schedule that we agreed to a couple of meetings ago. Everybody okay with that and not doing a separate meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
So you would like Christine to present that to the committee?
correct.
Okay.
And that would be first thing, ideally, at 6:30, and we could do that if everybody's okay with that. It sounds like we are. And then we'll dive into town budget. If she would be able to send out end October prior to that, so we have a chance to review it before she goes over it, that would be lovely, wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so, other business, next meeting.
17.
Correct. Correct, and what are we doing? Yeah. So I'll get the agenda out for that. That should be actually fairly brief as far as agenda-wise. Steve, let me know, let Dave know, let us know as far as what order, if it's something you want on the agenda, or we're just gonna start where we
We'll
start.
just
I'm
start
gonna put
and-
one bullet on there, and when.
I'll do my
start where we
PowerPoint and we'll go from there.
All right. Does anyone have anything else they would like to bring up? Blue, I think that addressed what you had asked about, so we did that. Anybody got anything else?
If you don't, what you
All right,
yeah.
final line item. Motion to adjourn, please. Mr. Lang,
Yep.
seconded by Mr. Kiefaber. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.